So today, there's a couple of specific inspirations I'm going to share, but I wanted to share a story about, well, why am I going to share those? And so I got an email from a woman I met in July, and I got an email from her a couple of days ago. And in the email, she proceeded to tell me that her son had committed suicide 4 months ago. Now, when I met this woman in July, Mark and I were on vacation, and I had no idea she was going through that at that time. So today I want to share a little bit about my experience with her, how I sort of felt inspired to share my book with her and gave her extra copies, which ended up going to his sister, which becomes part of the story. And then there's a way that there's a couple of stories in here she points out, and I want to talk about those, right? So that's what I'm going to talk about today, is this experience I had with a woman I met a month ago who recently emailed me letting me know her son had committed suicide, and an unfolding that has happened in that time. All right. Again, I'm Michael LeBlanc. Thanks for tuning in. Say hello as you do. I appreciate that. All right. And I'm going to share a couple of stories that she mentions in her email. So in July, I went to Arkansas and ended up meeting this woman. And you just meet some people and you genuinely just like them. And you meet some people and you genuinely don't like them. Well, she was on the really like her side, right? And just had a great few interactions with her over the time we were there. And I tend to follow my heart. I tend to follow inspiration. I listen inwardly quite often throughout my day rather than whatever my analytical brain is trying to come up with. Because I know the best answer for me is going to come from in here and not from this debate my brain can kind of come up with. And part of that is your brain is using information, limited information, and it's kind of analyzing that information. And when I really want to know what's best, then I go to this infinite intelligence rather than this limited intelligence. And so I felt inspired when I was visiting with her to kind of give her, I had some copies of Divine Dirt with me, and I ended up giving her some copies, and she had a small team of people, and I gave her a bunch to give to her team. One was going to go to her sister. All right? So all that goes well. We end up leaving. A month goes by. And then just the other day, really about 3 days ago, I get an email from her. Well, I got a text, and she says, "Hey, I'd like your email. I really want to let you know something about your book." And so it was like, okay. And so one of her opening paragraphs in this letter, I kind of printed it out because I wanted to share, was, "My son committed suicide 4 months ago." And she proceeds to talk about him and to talk about that experience. But I got to thinking when I met her a month ago, that had already happened. That had been about 3 months before, because this was July and she's saying he committed suicide 4 months ago. And so it got me thinking of just, you never know what people are going through. There was nothing, she was just delightful when I was interacting with her. Had no clue she had just recently experienced such a horrible tragedy that her son, who was 31, had committed suicide. And so it got me thinking of just, there's a few different pieces we're going to touch on today with this story. But it got me thinking of just how you never know what someone is really going through. And I was so glad I offered kind of love, kindness, laughter when I was with her. now that I know, at the time I was meeting her, she was dealing with huge grief of losing her son. But again, I had no idea about that at the time. So like I said, I had a great interaction with her. I felt inspired to leave her a copy of the book. And so she proceeds in her letter to tell me about her son's suicide and goes into some details about that. And she did that because she wanted me to kind of get a sense of where she was and what she's going through. And she also, I mentioned I'd given her a copy of my book to give to her sister, who lives, I think, in Boston or something. And her sister is the one that said, hey, have you started reading Divine Dirt? And she hadn't. She just hadn't been reading anything. She's just been trying to really stay afloat every day, which makes sense, right? If you've gone through something that tragic. And so she said she and her sister are close, and her nudge from her sister to pick up the book and start reading it helped her just do that. And she proceeds to tell me that, let me see where she is. She goes, I picked up your book and I read the first 4 pages, and I've been reading a few pages each day since then. And it's been about 5 days, she says. But she says, I wanted you to know the profound relief I'm getting from the passages you've written in this wonderful book. And she talks about one chapter in particular called Fear to Joy in 12 Minutes. And I'm going to share that chapter. But it got me thinking of just, so this book, when I wrote it, all I was writing were these short, like the one she refers to as a page long. I would pair it with a picture from my garden. But all that was very, like I mentioned at the beginning, it was inspiration from in here. It was not an analytical thing about writing this. And and I kept writing these, and I would share them on social media, and people would write back that they were helpful. Hey, it helped me, remember something, or it helped me remember something about myself. But I gotta admit, as much as I always hope when I write this one, or even wrote my first book, that it would be uplifting. But I never imagined that something in here could help someone who lost her son to suicide. Like I never dreamed that could be that significant, or anything that came out of me could be that helpful and significant. And so there's a couple of reasons I'm sharing that story, and then I'm going to share the one she points out, the Fear to Joy in 12 Minutes. But the couple of the points about sharing that were, one, I followed an inspiration to share something with her at a time, and I had no clue what was going on with her. And so I share that because I think in our day-to-day, we never know what's going on with people. So why not take more time to kind of genuinely be kind, offer love, be helpful, kind of resist sometimes some of those negative reactions. It seems like we've just gotten more easy or comfortable feeling like I have a right to, so I get to. And it's like, you do have a right to, but what the hell does that mean? What are you offering the world? Come back around to that for a moment. So part of the message was I followed an inspiration about that. The other part of this was, even writing this was a journey. At first, it was just thoughts of writing these pieces, these small articles of inspiration. And then later it was put it together and come up with a book. And it's been just a journey, but never ever did I realize that something in here could help a mother who had lost her son to suicide. And he was an adult. He was 31. He had a family. There was really no indications of anything going wrong. So in her email to me, right, one of the chapters she said that was helpful was Fear to Joy in 12 Minutes. So I'm going to share that one. And then she talks about another one about strength and silence. So I'll share a couple of points on that one. But Fear to Joy in 12 Minutes, it's a true story. Most of these are. But it was a particular time I woke up, I had a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety. And I think right now she's dealing with a lot of fear, anxiety, confusion, anger, probably all that kind of stuff. Just loss, sadness. But what I started doing that particular morning when I woke up that way, so Esther Hicks' Teachings of Abraham, big part of my spiritual growth has been her teachings. And one of the things she would always talk about is reach for thoughts that feel better. Because in her teachings, and I believe them too, and I talk about them in my book, your emotions are always letting you know, how aligned am I with my divine self, and how out of alignment am I? And your emotions are always that indicator. The further I am away from, meaning my thinking, the way I'm viewing life, the way I'm viewing myself, the further away I am from my divine self, the more negative my emotions will be. As I journey closer and closer and focus and think in a way that is aligned with my divine self, then I'm going to return to more feelings of peace, joy, wholeness, those that are more natural. Not they're all natural, but more my true state of being would be a better way to say that. So as I posed to her in this chapter, you deliberately get a journal and you deliberately make an agreement that for the next period of time, I set a timer for like 10 minutes, I'm only going to reach for thoughts that feel better. Meaning, what are thoughts that my divine self would be thinking about me, about my life, about a situation? And that morning I did it and I stayed with it. And I just started, what's a general thought? It was like, one of them was, nothing really in this moment is going bad. It just feels that way. Right? It was just old feelings of fear and anxiety, but nothing true in my real life in that moment when I woke up was truly bad. So that was just an initial place. And I kept reaching for another thought, another thought, another thought. And 12 minutes later, I felt amazing. I went from true fear, anxiety to feeling joy, right, in those 12 minutes. And she was sharing with me that reading this chapter was it was helping her find some relief from her grief, from the loss of her son, from the suicide. It was helping her just gradually just reach for one better feeling thought, for one thought that's more aligned with true. And just reaching for one more thought, she started feeling some relief, right? So I share her, I figured, well, if she's going through something, the loss of her son and a suicide, and as she's finding that's useful, then maybe that would be useful to you in something you're going through. So when I pause like this, what I'm doing is I'm listening. It's like, what else do I want to share today? And I really think that's it, though. I wanted to share her email to me, because when I met her, I did not know she was dealing with her son's death. And just a reminder, we never know what people are truly going through. So reach for as much love as you can, as often as you can. When I did meet her, I felt a genuine inspiration and guidedness to give her the book. Just felt like I wanted to. Gave her extras. She gave one to her sister. She gave some to her staff. Her sister nudged her to read it. Her sister knew she was grieving and had lost her son. I had no idea. And then a month later, I get this email about her son, about his death, but about how these words are starting to give her some relief in this tragic moment of hers. And the other point of that is really not about this book, but it's about, I think a lot of us don't follow our genuine inspiration. We don't follow that voice, that intelligence, that you are divine beings. You are connected to source. You are part of infinite intelligence. And it's way beyond what goes on in your head. So the more often you can get out of your head, the better. I recommend it all the time. And so I share that because the following of that is what led me to write this. Led me to want to do this. The following of that inspiration is what led me to give to her and not know anything was going on. And so there's just this divine way all these things are being orchestrated, which is just kind of profound in its own way. All right, so when I feel like I'm starting to ramble, that means to wrap it up. So thanks for saying good morning. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you find some of that useful. You really are a divine being. You won't access it all that well when all you do is analyze and stay in your head. You really do need to pause. Deep breathing, the breath of all is well is usually a good way to keep kind of centering, get back in your heart. And then tune into there and listen from there and see what it tells you to do. All right? So you have a great day. I will talk to you in a few days. Thanks. Bye.